The Carf models Rebel Pro is moving along very nicely. This video we're starting off with installing our Zykoy 195 engine in this beautiful aircraft. Let's dive back in and keep moving along with this assembly. So last video we got our tail section basically done, we got our pipe installed, that's all finished. We got our tank and our plate laid up. So this focus of this video, first thing we're going to do is get the turbine installed. Now that's pretty straightforward, but there's some details here that I'll go over with you guys just to make sure it's covered. And then I think we're going to get into the wings is going to be the big portion of this. And we may continue working on our equipment plate, but the wings is going to be the next big portion in this video. All right guys, our gear showed up today, which is a huge thumbs up, and we thought this was going to be the Pro model with the more compact hidden controller, but it ended up coming with the GS200. So what we're going to do is this is going to be the only visible piece on our deck here. Now we're not using the gyro on the Electron unit. This is just to control the brake or the gear and the brakes, and that's everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a hidden mount that this will be flush mounted with the top deck here. So I'm going to design that. It's going to be a 3D printed piece, and we'll take a little bit of brain power, but that's going to be the only thing that's visible on our top deck, along with my built by sign on there. So that's good. Working on this first before we pop that engine in, and I know I said we're going to do that right away. So I'm just coming up with my design on how we're going to create a flush mount. All right, so we spent some time designing our flush mount for our GS200. So this was our first iteration of this. This is the back plate that goes on there. And I printed this out of PETG carbon fiber, so worked out good, happy with the design. Now the only thing I didn't like on the design was not that it's a big deal, but you'd have to Velcro the controller or double-sided tape it to this tray, which is okay, but I kind of wanted also the option of not having to do that. So what I did was we're printing our actual one in the plane in white, and what I did was I added a 3mm lip right here, which is going to hold this guy in place. Now I just did it on the ends, I didn't do it all the way around. That's a change I could make as well. But the other thing I was thinking about doing was completely covering everything up and only showing just the display. Downside to that is if you're unscrewing this to work on it, then there's no way to really see. I mean, I don't know. There's lots of different design options. This is what I came up with. This is what we're going to use. And of course, we're printing that on our Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon. Love this thing. And you can see there, we are currently printing it in white. We've just started printing. It's just working on its third layer, and working good. So that should be done in about an hour and 48 minutes, I think is what it says. Yep. And the reason we went with the white is because it's going to be mounted right there. The blue background, white, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I was thinking about black initially, and then I thought about maybe red, but the red we have is more subdued because it's a carbon red. And anyways, the white's going to look awesome right there. It's just going to fit beautifully right on that spot. So next thing we're moving on to is what we were talking about before in our engine mounting. Now the other thing we can do as well, and we need to start thinking about, is our equipment tray that fits in there on our tabs. Now it's been a couple days and our tabs are very strong, so that is all ready to go. So need to start getting our equipment tray templated out as well, but we'll get the engine installed first. So first step to do with the engine install is I've got all my exercise balls here. We're gonna get our fuselage kind of nice and leveled out. Okay, so let's take a look at a very common question. That question is pipe distance. So basically on a setup like this with a pipe opening, which is what I would call standard, from the edge of the pipe, which you can kind of see it right on this top side here, the bolts obviously bolt both together, so we're a little bit forward of the edge of the metal pipe. So if we use this guy right down here, which is one of our fastening bolts, and we've got a little space on the ruler there, so if we go 30mm away from that point, it is going to bring us right in between the face of the carbon and this piece of wood right here. So when I get my engine installed, I want the tail cone to be sitting about halfway between the bell mouth or the mouth and the wood here. shying a little bit closer towards the pipe. Now, in this type of scenario, you know, a few millimeters in either direction makes no difference at all. With a big bell mouth, so like a 3-inch bell mouth, generally what you want to do is split the difference. So if it's a 3-inch bell mouth, you want to go halfway, so 1.5 inches. You want your end of the tail cone to be 1.5 inches in, right at the midpoint of the bell mouth. So that's the general rule. That's my suggestion to you, and that's how we're going to set this guy up. All right, so first thing we'll do is we're going to take our engine, and we're going to get it centered and distanced. So first thing with distance here is, like we just talked about, we're going to kind of split that difference, so we'll be about there. And next thing I want to do is take a look at my mounting holes on the turbine. So we've got kind of a few different sets here. We've got an outer set, which is what we're actually going to use, a middle set, and then the single one in the middle. Now if I go to the middle ones and I put this halfway on the wood right there, come to the other one, and you'll notice that we're halfway on the wood. So right now in the mounting, as long as the turbine mounts in the fuselage are even, which they should be, but we want to confirm, this turbine should be centered left to right, and we already know that it's centered up and down. We know our distance is good right there. So what we'll do is we'll go to the back and take a look. So when we go to the back of the fuselage, one thing I'm looking at is I'm getting my head in the center. You guys won't be in the center, but I'm getting my head in the center, and I'm looking at that profile all around the tail cone of the turbine. And we've got a nice even profile when my head's centered. I'll try and show you guys here. So that tells me that left to right, our turbine is basically bang on right there. So that is pretty quick and easy. Okay, turbine fastening. I generally don't use wood blind nuts. I like to use wood screws. So I'm going to use some nice wood screws with a pan head to hold this guy down. We'll pre-drill these first 2 holes because we've got easy access. Put some CA in the holes. And that's another little trick that I'll do is I'll drop some CA in the holes while I screw the screw in, so the CA is still wet, and that locks everything in place. So if you need to get that screw out, it'll pop off and loosen, but it's not going to come loose during flight or during the life of the plane until you want it to come out. All right, engine has been mounted, and you can see there we used some big hex screws with a wood end on them. And then we also used some rubber faced washers. So these are the RTL ones, the number 6 bonded washers. So we put a bunch of those, or so obviously 6 of them, on our screws. Okay, so now with engine in place, we don't really need to do much more with the engine until we get our board kind of wrapped up and our wiring more moving forward. So we will obviously end up mounting the data relay module somewhere. We've only got so far to go with our cable, so we'll figure all that out after. So now let's move on to our wings. Now we know our wing wiring is going to come through probably right in this location right there, which is right in front of the wing tube. And what that means on the wing itself is this is the hole where our piece is going to go into. Now we're going to have, I think, a 12-pin ash lock connector should do it. So we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A light on the wingtip is 11, 12. So yes, a 12-pin ash lock connector will work perfect, and this is where it'll tuck in. So we'll have the piece coming off the fuselage, the piece coming out of the wing, and then the excess will just slip inside when we put our wings on. So anyways, we'll take a look at that when we get to it, but let's clear off our workbench and get going with our wings, especially now that we've got our gear here to install. All right, so we got our right wing on the table here, and we are going to start outside and work our way in on the wing. So first thing we're going to do is get our light mounted. Now our marker light that goes on the tip, pretty straightforward with these Sky Candy units. Obviously, this is how I remember it. It's kind of goofy, but red not on the right. So on the right is green, and the left is red. That's how I remember it. So anyways, our green light is going on the right wing, and just kind of figuring out where this is going to go. So the perpendicular to our wing kind of comes out like this. So what I'm looking at here is this isn't the flight path that's parallel with the center of the fuselage. this is the flight path that's parallel with the center of the fuselage. So if we put those lights kind of in this area here, so maybe 2 inches back from our blue mark there, that's going to be a good location that allows visibility all the way around from that green light. Just need to make sure that we've got enough wing there, which we do if we go about in this area. So that's probably where we're going to do it. What I do is I just take my awl and I just make a hole that fits this perfectly. This wire, I'll cut the end off because this end is going to get crimped to our ashlock connector at the root of the wing, and we'll probably have to extend this guy anyways. But so let's get our hole done here first, and then we will get that, that light installed. All right, so our second iteration here is done, and this one worked out better. The only change I made, obviously it's white, but the only change I made is I added a 3mm lip on each edge there. And what that does is that stops the brake controller or gear controller from coming up through. So now we don't need to Velcro it down or anything like that. Basically, we can screw the bottom plate in and it's held in place. So that is perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. And the other cool thing is this actually acts as a template. So we lay this down and we trace this out on the airframe or the plate, and this will just slip right through, gets screwed in place, and then we've got our back plate holding everything on. All right, so I used the Align reamer tool and made our hole for our light here, and you can see it fits in there just beautifully. So what I'll do now is I'm going to take some E6000. This is the same as Shoe Goop, it's just a little bit thinner. And we're going to put this around the base, get the base set in place. Now this is a perfect fit, so it actually, I don't need to worry about it slipping in or anything. And we're going to let that E6000 cure, and that'll hold that light in place just beautifully. And we've run that light wire to the aileron wire, where the aileron pocket is, and then that will get paired up and go towards the root of the wing with the aileron wire. All right, so we did a couple things here. We got all of our wires for the wings done up. So we've got our power box wire extending our light wire. We've taken the white wire out of that. We've taken the white wire out of our light wire, and we made up our connectors for our ailerons, our flaps, for the wings as well. So those are all done. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our servo installed. We basically, as a first step, need to check position on that servo. So we've got our servo hatch here. Obviously that can't really change as far as position goes. They've also got the opening already done, and it's nice and wide, and it's pretty much as long as it's going to get. So I'm assuming our servo output shaft is going to be towards the surface like typical, which is going to bring the arm up here. Anyway, so we're going to get our servo put in there, and we'll see how things pan out as far as the spacing goes. And so we've got our servo installed. Now these servos are definitely a bit of a pain in the butt to install. What I ended up doing was what's suggested in the manual. I put a big long screwdriver with extensions here together, and you can access it through the root of the wing. And once you do that, it's fairly easy to get your servo screws in. So that's done. We're using a Seacraft thick, heavy-duty arm. These are pretty much the only Seacraft ones I'll use. Some of their arms have this big, wide open space, and they're not very strong at all. So we've drilled this out for a 3mm pin, and on this aileron, we are going to use the standard clevis setup because it fits really well with this system. Everything lines up, so we're going to use the stock system for that. So this is just to get things lined up. Again, we'll put shrink tube over it like normal. And so that's the aileron system. We're not going to do the servo setup yet until we've got the wiring connection at the root of our wing, but there is our servo arm. So that is good. Happy with that. So next thing we can do is probably run our wires to the root of our wing here. And then once that's done, we can start getting our flap set up. All right, so working on the flaps here, I used my file and I made the channel there longer. Now it comes with a small little hole right in the top part there where my finger is, right up there. But that's just a locator location. There's no way the linkage works. So you have to extend that all the way to the top surface of the wing in order to have enough space for the linkage to work properly. like all of our other surfaces, we've assembled our flap linkage here, and this is going to tell us which direction the servo needs to sit in the flap opening. Okay, so we've got our flaps sorted. This is the left flap, this is the right flap. Now the flap arms go away from the surface, and when the flap is at full, it's going to be straight in line just like that, attached to this guy here. So that's how it all lines up. So I'm just doing some initial flap programming. Basically, with full flaps, this arm is going to be straight out like this. We're using a 1-inch servo arm, and basically we need to be sort of on the edge of that servo was the correct alignment. So then I've got my takeoff flaps programmed and flaps off programmed. Now what I'll do when I set my flaps up is I always do the full flaps, because that's generally most planes you're going to have a straight linkage. These guys here, I've got a ton of adjustment, but I always back it off a bunch. So this is probably not going to be enough to bring the flaps up all the way, but then we can go into our flap menu and adjust those things. So now that we've got our servos laid out, we're going to Loctite and bolt those servo arms down, and then we can get this servo installed in the right wing. Okay, so we've got our flap servo installed in the spot that it needs to go in. And the arm's attached to the flap side, not attached to the surface side. So we're going to get that flap screwed in place, and then we'll see how much travel we have. We're looking for 60 degrees at max flap, which is something like that. Okay, so we got the basics of our flap done up. Our servo is just done up with 2 screws. We've got our bolt through the flap linkage there. And we're just taking our angle finder and getting it set to this wing. So we're going to pick the same spot on both wings, and that's how we're going to adjust it. So right about there. Because the wing has an angle to it, sorry about the noise in the background, that's my new 3D printer. We have to make a bit of compensation there. So what I do is I push down with the angle finder, level it out, so we just make sure we match the both wings to being exactly the same. So now we'll screw that flap down, and we'll get our surface done up here with our linkage. So I'm just running our flap wire here, and I just realized that we've got the lights to install on the landing legs, the Sky Candy landing lights. So we actually will be using 2 connectors here, because we've got our 12 pins plus the 2 for the landing lights. Because we've got 14 pins, so if we do a 9-pin ash lock, and then we do a 6-pin. That may work as well too. The only downside is pairing those things up properly. So, all right, so landing gear time. Now, a couple things I'm looking at here when I go to install the landing gear. Number one, they've already pre-done holes in the former work, which is great because the blind nuts that are included in the kit and everything matches up perfectly. So that's already done. Obviously, the location is finished set, which is super awesome. So the other thing I'm looking at is how we are going to route the brake lines. So generally I like to run the brake lines right like this if I can. So I got the gear installed in there, put the cover in, and we don't know how this is going to fully extend yet, but I think there might be enough room right there. If not, we will probably have them routed right down there. But either way, our brake line and light line that's going to get mounted on the leg is going to get wrapped in snakeskin or spiral wrap. So we just need to figure out the best route, obviously on this wing, and then we duplicate it on the other one. So I'm going to get the blind nuts installed in the wing next. And these are the blind nuts that come with the kit. So they're the gold colored ones, big hardware and big washers. All right, so we've got our blind nuts installed, put the gear in place, and we've got our leg installed here. Now, the leg needs to have some angle backwards. So the angle adjust on the electrons is done with this bolt. So I've put it through here. It's the one with the ball bearing on it. Use some blue Loctite, and this is what adjusts the angle of the leg. So what we do is we get the gear kind of lined up. Basically, we're following the straight path right here on the gear. We can go one step further and put 2 of our fixing bolts in. That'll make sure everything's lined up the way it's going to be lined up. So yeah, when we tighten this guy down, the leg is essentially straight with the back side of the opening here, like that. Okay, so that's just kind of snugged in place, and we can see how our angle's working. So now what I do is I just adjust this slowly until we're where we need to be. Now, ultimately what really matters is that you're centered in the opening here with the wheel. So that's really what actually matters. So we can take our wheel, put it in there like that, just have it sitting over the axle and just kind of confirming that we are basically in the right spot, which it looks like we are. So that's good to go. Now we can pop this leg out. And what we want to do next is we want to get our wheel installed, and we want to Loctite everything that needs to be Loctited. Now, what I'll generally do on this stuff is you need flat spots on these guys, and you can either do the flat spots on the part that goes inside the trunnion, or you can do the flat spots on this section right here. Ultimately, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be whatever's easier for you. Okay, so when we look at the root of our wing here, I've got a square. I'm just going to insert the square in the wing tube and push it against the fuselage, and we can see there that the, Nez, you're going to get it? That the root of our wing is parallel to the center line of the fuselage. So that is level, which is perfect. That makes things quite easy. So what that means is we can take this root of the wing, we can transfer it over and use that line to get our toe-in set up on our main gear. So what I do when I flat spot these guys, I'm going to flat spot the pin that goes into the leg first. So I take these guys, crank them down, all 4 of them, and that leaves a little black mark, a little tiny black circle on this hardened pin. So when we pull the pin out, we can actually see those little marks, and we'll make our flat spots on the leg first. And then when we go to set our toe-in up, I will make those final adjustments on this part of the pin using the ones that go into the trunnion. All right, now this has been pretty common lately with the Electron gears. So this pin that goes into the legs has fit very, very snug. So much so that when you take your set screws out, you actually can't even remove the pin. So I've been doing this on a fairly regular basis. Basically, I just take my propane torch, and you have to heat the leg up, and then your pin ends up coming out. Now, because your leg is aluminum and your pin is steel, the leg will expand quicker than the steel, and usually loosens up pretty straightforward. Now, I've also found that after you have these legs together for a long time, maybe you've used too much Loctite, sometimes you need to do this as well, just to get the thing apart. So there you go. With that done, it comes apart pretty easy. We may need to do that again to reinstall, but what we're looking at here, I think the camera will pick this up, try and show you guys there, the 2 round circles on the pin. So we're just going to do both sides of the pin. We've got some on this side, some on this side. So we just take our Dremel with our disc and just put 2 little flat spots there. They don't have to be huge. It's just got to have something for that set screw to grab to. All right, so we've got our gear screwed in there, and it's the leg's just kind of sitting in place. It's still loose. So what we're going to do here is extend it. Now, the manual controller that you can get for the Electron retracts is very handy, especially in situations like this. Yeah, so anyways, let's extend this gear. Okay, so we're rubbing a little bit on the inside there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because our holes are fixed, I'm going to I'm going to loosen these guys off and see if I can slide the gear this way. I don't think I'm going to get any movement out of it. So we've got to take just a little bit of this area off, but we're centered front to back right now, which is good. All right, so we've transferred the root of our wing in and put a carbon rod up to the wheel. And basically what this does is it shows you when you're level with the root of the wing. We've added a little bit of toe in there, a couple degrees basically, so if the carbon rod's touching back here, we're about 4 or 5 millimeters away from the tape at the front. and cinched our pinch bolts down. Now with our pinch bolts cinched down, we can take our tape off, and then now using our stronger L-bend Allen keys, we can get these guys tightened up enough to make a mark on the pin, and then we can pull this leg off. And actually I made a mistake when I did this because I like to leave my tape on so that we can confirm our wheel is sitting in the right spot. So we'll put our piece of tape back on here, and then I'll run another piece when I'm ready to do that. Okay, so we take our L-bend, give that a nice snug down. And if we don't have access to them, like this one on the outside here, that's where the sequencer or the gear controller comes in handy, the manual controller. So all I need to do is retract this a little bit. And we've got good access to our bolt there. There we go. So we've tightened all 4 of them down. Now we'll take them out, and there should be a black mark on our pin to make our flat spots. Now I like to do all 4 pins, all 4 fasteners, but you can also get away with just doing one side as well too. That's totally fine, and either way works. There we go. And yeah, we've got good marks there on our pin right there, which is perfect. Hopefully that shows up in camera. So I'm going to use my Dremel and make some flat spots. Okay, so we've got our leg put back in. I ran another piece of tape there. Now generally what I'll do is I'm going to, as I tighten this inner one up here, I'm just going to twist the leg back and forth, so now I know we're sitting on the flat spot. And we're going to check this to confirm that we're happy. So I just loosened off the first one, did up the second one. Okay, so that's good. So this is the time when you could adjust those fasteners if you needed to. And when you're happy with them, basically what you want to do is you want to get them loosened off, and you want to put some Loctite in there and tighten them down. So put just a little bit of blue Loctite on the fastener. Okay, so this first one that I'm doing is going to be the one that sets our angle. Okay, so we're nice and tight. Put a carbon rod back on there, and we've got a good amount of toe in. So again, when the carbon rod's touching here, we've got about 5 millimeters at the front. So just a nice little bit of toe in, and that is perfect. So now we'll go through and we're going to Loctite our other fasteners. All right, so let's take a look at our landing light now that we have things all cinched up. Now, generally the way you would typically install the landing light would be on the front of the leg. We can't really do it here. Don't want to do it here because that has a down angle to it. So one of the best ways that I've found, I guess to take a step back, if we mount it to the front of the leg like this, when this leg comes down, we need to add a cutout here in the wing surface itself. So if you've got enough depth here in your wing, which we've got lots of depth, I found the best way to install these things is high saw them right to the inside of the leg. So now when this leg retracts, you can see there, it doesn't come down any further than the wheel itself. It's nice and hidden, and it's generally a really nice way to get these guys mounted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this guy roughened up, and we are going to get this first light high sawed in place. And we're just using the back of the leg here as a guide. So I'm just going to run it right about there, so in line with the opening for the leg itself, and that should work absolutely perfect. All right, so we got both of our wings at the same stage now. So our gear's installed, all of our surfaces are done, and we're just waiting for our lights to kind of cure and such here. So we're going to, I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fit our little cover plate here. Now these cover plates will need to be fit no matter what, because you can see there we're shy from them actually working. So we're basically going to have this cover plate come all the way out and essentially come right to this location right here. Now the benefits of that is I didn't know how much space we would have in this area. We've got enough there. So what that means is my brake lines and light lines, I'm going to run right down in that area, and it's going to work exactly how I normally like to do it. So when this leg comes out, the excess kind of just folds up in here, and then when the leg retracts this way, it has a nice give to it where it's not causing any issues. So, and then we'll cover that with snakeskin. So that is going to work out perfect, but we've got to get these guys sanded out here first. All right, so we're back on the right wing here. We've got all of our lines run and everything. So what I did was I encapsulated the light and brake wire in snakeskin, put some shrink tubing on the end here, and that snakeskin comes to about here. So it's pretty much this entire area. So any movement on these wires as the gear goes in and out will be protected by the snakeskin. And it actually comes through the main port there where we're putting all the wiring through. So that worked out good. We've got all of our wires run here. I've cycled the gear to make sure it works fine and doesn't interfere with anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our connectors installed on the wing. So we're going to use a 12-pin ash lock on the one side, and then we're going to use a 3-pin ash lock on the other side. Now the other side is just for the gear lights is what I'm probably going to do with it. And so anyways, that'll be nice and simple. 12-pin connector fits in here perfectly, so there's lots of room in there for the connector, so that won't be any problem. So I'm going to get this gear done, or this wing done, and then we'll do the other wing just like we've been working on. All right, so we got our connectors here done. Now I changed this up a little bit. So I went with a 6-pin for our two surfaces, so our aileron and flap. And then I went with a 9-pin for everything else. So the reason I did that was we got tip light, landing light, brake, and then gear. Now if you look at the gear, you can see that it's spread out there. So what that means is if we want to cycle this gear, we can just put a normal servo connector on there. That servo connector can plug into our manual controller, and we don't have to have any special cable or anything. And also these cables fit in the little opening in the wing a little bit easier than the 12. So anyways, one wing is done. We're going to focus on getting the covering done next, and then we'll just match up the other wing to it. All right, big step complete. We've got both of our wings done. Left wing here, right wing sitting right there. And we've cleaned them up, wiped down both sides, and they are done, which is very exciting. This is a big step. I do find that wings often take a long time. Like these wings, for example, I started working on them at 10 o'clock this morning. Didn't really have much done, and it's 8 o'clock now. So it's taken me 10 hours to get these wings done. And I don't know, people say I'm fast, but that's how long it took me. So there's just lots of figuring out. And anyways, it's done. So whew, happy the wings are complete. So last thing to do here that I want to get done is our connectors at our wing roots, or at the fuselage. So I've marked out the center of that square slot where everything is coming through on the wing, and we're going to put our through fitting in here, and then we'll get our wiring, the other side of our wiring set up and installed in this side of the fuselage. Pretty straightforward stuff. I will show you guys the details, but ultimately just making sure that we have wires long enough to come to the front section here to basically match up with these guys so they can plug into the stuff on the top of the tray. So that's the next thing we are working on here. All right, so we've got our left wing connector side all complete. So you can see there it's run through a through fitting. We've got some shrink tubing, and we've got both sides. Now, all of our wire ends have been installed, so I've put our ends on there. Everything's been marked and done properly, so this side's done. I'll show you guys how I get to this stage with incomplete side, which is our right side. So basically what I do is I get all of our connectors done up here and our wires done up. So usually I'll have a wing here so I can match everything up and everything plugs in properly. And then what I'll do is mark off the wires. So on one pair of wires, I know this is our gear ones because we put the split on there. Put 1 mark, 2 marks, 3 marks, no marks, and then I know make those corresponding marks on the other end of the wires. So I know what is what when I put these through the through fitting in the fuselage. Now you can't put all the ends on this side and get it through the through fitting, so that's why I have everything marked off like that. So now what I'll do is I'll get these guys connected with some shrink tubing, and then we can run them through the through fitting in the fuselage and then do our other ends. All right, so we've got both of our wires on our wings now complete, and also on this side here we've got our elevator and rudder wires hooked up as well too. So the wiring portion of the wings and the fuselage to the wings is done. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed video number 2 in the build series or assembly series of the Carf Rebel Pro aircraft. We've made some good progress on this episode. Obviously we got the turbine installed, we got the wings complete, we got the wiring to the fuselage complete. Lots of good success in this episode. So the plan is, next episode we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna start on our equipment tray, get the front end kind of laid out and such, and that's going to be the next and probably the final episode. A couple parting notes here for you. Just encourage you guys to check out the Lighter Side of RC After Dark. The Lighter Side of RC After Dark is where we do live streams here from the shop. It's a completely separate channel. Usually every 2 weeks we do a live stream on that channel for about 2 hours. It's tons of fun. The best thing for me about it is we get to communicate back and forth. If you're watching during the live, you can ask questions and interact with us. It's tons of fun. I love it. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching this assembly of the Carf Rebel Pro, and we'll see you in the next video.